What so many of us miss is how the quiet, invisible hurt cuts just as deep. Emotional abuse doesn't leave bruises we can show to a doctor or point to in a mirror, but it still shapes who we believe we are. It still makes us question our worthiness. And it still leaves scars, deep ones. One of the most painful truths I have learned, not just through research, but through sitting across from thousands of people, is that when harm is invisible, we often gaslight ourselves into thinking it's not real. Maybe I'm just too sensitive. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I'm the problem. Seek inspiration. But here's the truth. Pain is pain. Abuse is abuse, even if no one else can see the bruises. When someone repeatedly manipulates, belittles, shames, or controls us, it chips away at our belief that we are good and lovable as we are. Over time, emotional abuse can rewire the way we see ourselves. The research shows that survivors of emotional abuse often struggle with chronic self-doubt, anxiety, and even symptoms of PTSD long after the abusive relationship ends. And here's the thing. It doesn't happen all at once. It's slow, it's subtle, it's like water dripping on a stone, small at first, almost unnoticeable. Maybe it starts with a sarcastic comment disguised as a joke. Maybe it's a dismissive eye roll when you express excitement about something that matters to you. Maybe it's being told over and over again that you're too sensitive or overreacting or making a big deal out of nothing. At first, you think, okay, maybe they're right. Maybe I am too much. And then without realizing it, you start editing yourself. You shrink a little. You hesitate before sharing your ideas. You apologize for things that are not even wrong. You begin living from a place of who do I need to be so they don't get upset, instead of this is who I am. What I have found in the research and in real conversations with people who have walked through emotional abuse is that the erosion of self-worth is not just emotional. It's biological. Studies show that repeated emotional invalidation activates the same pain centers in the brain as physical injury. The brain actually responds to social rejection and belittlement as if it were physical pain. This means when someone continually makes you feel small, invisible, or ashamed, your brain logs it the same way it would log a broken bone. And yet, because there are no visible marks, we question ourselves. We think it's not that bad. Other people have it worse. Maybe I'm just being dramatic. Let me say this clearly. Minimizing our own pain does not heal it. It buries it deeper. And buried pain has a way of leaking out sideways through anxiety, depression, anger, isolation, and sometimes even physical illness. One woman I interviewed said something that has stayed with me for years. She said, "He never hit me, he never screamed at me, but after years of being with him, I felt like a ghost in my own life." That's what emotional abuse does. It makes us question if we even have the right to take up space, to have needs, to have a voice. And if we don't know what's happening, we often internalize the blame. If I were stronger, this wouldn't bother me. If I were better, they would treat me differently. If I were enough, this relationship would feel safe. But the truth is, no matter how strong or kind or perfect we try to be, abuse is never a reflection of our worth. It's a reflection of the abuser's own wounds, fears, and need for control. Our worthiness is not up for debate. It is inherent. It is non-negotiable. It does not shrink just because someone else refuses to see it. Healing starts by telling the truth to ourselves, even if we whisper it at first. I deserve to be spoken to with respect. I deserve to feel safe in my relationships. I deserve to exist fully without walking on eggshells. When emotional abuse has chipped away at who we are, our work is to gently and bravely rebuild. Not into someone new, but back into the person we always were, before someone else's fear and control tried to convince us we were not enough. Unlike physical abuse, which might bring intervention from friends, neighbors, or even strangers, emotional abuse often happens behind closed doors and perfectly crafted facades. And when we do not name it, When we cannot name it, it thrives. What we do not talk about, we cannot heal. One of the most courageous things we can do is give language to our experiences. One of the reasons emotional abuse can be so devastating is because it hides in plain sight. It looks like a seemingly happy couple at a dinner party. It looks like a charming friend who jokes about their partner being crazy when they're not around. It looks like the polished, successful parent who slowly dismantles their child's confidence behind closed doors, all while posting perfect family photos online. I have sat across from people who have said things like, "But no one would believe me. He's so good with everyone else," or "She's the life of the party. Everyone loves her." That's the reality. Emotional abusers often know how to manage their image. They are experts at showing up in public one way and acting very differently in private. And that dissonance can make the person experiencing the abuse question their own perception of reality. It's confusing, it's isolating, and it's intentional. One study published in the Journal of Emotional Abuse found that survivors of emotional maltreatment often report not only feeling hurt by the abuser, but also feeling abandoned by friends and family who didn't or couldn't see the truth. Because when harm doesn't leave physical marks, outsiders often miss it. They can even unknowingly reinforce it by dismissing concerns. "I'm sure they didn't mean it that way. You're lucky to have them. You're overthinking it." And when we hear that enough, we internalize it. We stop reaching out. We stop speaking up. We convince ourselves that it must be us, that maybe we're too demanding or too emotional. I think about how silence functions almost like oxygen for emotional abuse. It feeds it, it keeps it alive. It allows the abuser to keep weaving their story while the person being harmed struggles alone in the dark. The antidote to that silence is not shouting from the rooftops or dramatic confrontations. It's quieter and much braver than that. It's saying to ourselves and to trusted people, "This is what's happening. It doesn't feel right. I am not okay." Naming emotional abuse doesn't mean we have to have every detail perfectly figured out. It doesn't require courtroom evidence. It just requires truth. Our truth. Even if it's messy, even if it's uncertain, even if our voice shakes when we say it. Because when we name it, we take the first step toward reclaiming our power. When we name it, we shine a light into the corners where shame wants us to stay small and silent. And when we shine that light, we give ourselves permission to ask for help, to set boundaries, to say no more. Silence protects the abuser. Speaking, even whispering, protects us. And maybe for the first time, we realize we are not crazy, we are not alone, we are survivors finding the courage to tell the truth about our own lives. Gaslighting, that experience of being told our reality is wrong, it's not just confusing, it is a deliberate tool used to maintain control. It's designed to make you question your instincts, your emotions, and even your memory. And when that happens, we begin to trust the abuser's version of reality more than our own. Reclaiming our trust in ourselves is essential to recovery. One of the biggest misconceptions about gaslighting is that it's just someone lying or being difficult. But it's much more calculated than that. It's the slow, methodical dismantling of a person's confidence in their own mind. It's when you confront someone about something that hurt you, and instead of being met with curiosity or concern, you're told, "That never happened. You're imagining things. You always make everything about you." Over time, that repeated experience doesn't just make you question the argument at hand, it makes you question your entire ability to know what's real. That is the true damage of gaslighting. It separates you from your inner compass, your gut feelings, and your right to trust your own experiences. And in my work, I have talked to so many people who said the same heartbreaking thing. I stopped trusting myself. And when we stop trusting ourselves, we stop advocating for ourselves. If we start second guessing every decision, we feel like we're walking through the world blindfolded. terrified of making a wrong move because somewhere along the way, someone taught us that we couldn't believe what we saw, what we heard, what we felt. There is powerful research from the field of psychology that shows how chronic invalidation, being consistently told your emotions are wrong, exaggerated, or irrational, can actually rewire how the brain processes emotional experiences. It heightens self-doubt, it lowers resilience, it increases susceptibility to further manipulation. It becomes biological confusion. Your brain's alarm system, the part that says this feels wrong, gets overridden so many times that eventually it stops going off altogether. And here's what's important to understand. Gaslighting is a strategy. It's not a misunderstanding. It's not someone being bad at communication. It's a deliberate effort to destabilize you, to keep you off balance, to make you easier to control. Knowing that is not about carrying bitterness or blame. It's about carrying clarity, because clarity is healing. Naming what happened to us with clear language, not watered down, not minimized, is what allows us to start rebuilding the broken connection with ourselves. Rebuilding that trust means paying attention when your gut tells you something feels off. It means believing yourself when you notice the red flags. It means practicing self-compassion when the old doubts start to creep in. Healing from gaslighting is not about never questioning yourself again. It's about learning that self-questioning is healthy when it's rooted in curiosity, not shame. And when we start to listen to that quiet, strong voice inside, the one that maybe got silenced for a long time, we start coming home to ourselves. We start saying, I am not too sensitive. I am not overreacting. What I experienced was real, and my feelings matter. One of the things I say all the time is you cannot heal what you refuse to acknowledge. Emotional abuse is real, it matters, and we deserve to call it what it is. Healing starts when we allow ourselves to say, this happened, it was real, it hurt, and it was not my fault. There's this powerful tendency we have, especially those of us who have experienced emotional abuse, to minimize what happened to us, to think it wasn't that bad or other people have had it worse. And while it's true that suffering exists on a spectrum, comparison does not lessen our pain. It only deepens our shame. Healing begins not by justifying or comparing, but by recognizing. It begins when we allow ourselves to sit with the truth of our own story without rushing to edit it, shrink it, or dress it up to make other people more comfortable. And the truth is, naming emotional abuse can feel terrifying. There's a reason it's often easier to stay silent. Naming it means acknowledging that someone we cared about, someone we trusted, harmed us. It means facing the grief that things were not as safe or as loving or as mutual as we needed them to be. It means facing the anger, the sadness, the loneliness that maybe we pushed down for years. But here's the paradox of healing. The feelings we try hardest to avoid are the very doorway to freedom. Naming the harm allows us to finally grieve it, and grieving it is what makes space for something new to grow. Something like self-compassion, resilience, or even hope. I remember listening to a woman who had spent decades in a marriage where she was consistently belittled and controlled. And she said, for a long time, I didn't want to call it abuse. It felt too dramatic, too heavy. I didn't want people to think badly of him or me. But the day she found the courage to name it for what it was, she said, was the day she felt like she could finally breathe again. And it was like I stopped gaslighting myself, she said. And that's what naming does. It stops the internal war. It stops the second guessing. It draws a clear line between the behavior and our identity. The abuse is real, but it is not who we are. The harm happened, but it does not define our future. The relationship may have failed us, but we are not failures. There's strong evidence in trauma research that shows how language plays a vital role in healing when survivors can put words to their experiences, whether through therapy, journaling, storytelling, or trusted conversations. They actually begin to reduce the intensity of traumatic memories in the brain. The stories become something we carry with us, not something that carries us away. It's not about staying stuck in victimhood. It's about honoring our reality so we can move through it. Not around it, not over it, but straight through it with courage and compassion. And every time we name the harm without shame, every time we choose to tell the truth about what happened, we reclaim a little more of ourselves. We reclaim our voice. We reclaim our right to feel safe, to feel seen, to feel whole again. Healing from emotional abuse isn't about waiting for an apology that may never come. It's about recognizing our own worthiness, setting boundaries that honor that worthiness, and surrounding ourselves with people who see and celebrate who we really are. It's about rewriting the story of our lives, not from a place of shame, but from a place of hard-earned strength. The hardest lessons I've had to learn, and I've heard this echoed by so many survivors, is that closure doesn't come from the person who hurt us. Closure isn't something they hand us wrapped in an apology. Closure is something we create for ourselves when we choose to stop waiting for validation from people who were never capable of giving it. When we've been emotionally abused, there's often a deep, aching part of us that still hopes they'll one day wake up and say, I see what I did. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve it. And it's so human to want that. We are wired for connection, for empathy, for accountability. Wanting someone to acknowledge your pain isn't weakness, it's being human, but healing demands that we don't let our wholeness hinge on someone else's awakening. It demands that we recognize my worth is not dependent on your apology. My healing is not waiting on your understanding. My story matters whether you validate it or not. That's where boundary work becomes life-saving work. Boundaries are not walls we build out of anger or fear. They are the bridges we build toward our own dignity and peace. When we say, I will not allow people to belittle me, or I will not stay in conversations where my feelings are dismissed, we're not being harsh. We're being fiercely loving toward ourselves. Research shows that survivors who learn to establish clear, compassionate boundaries after emotional abuse report higher levels of self-esteem, lower rates of anxiety, and a stronger sense of personal agency. Boundaries tell the world and remind ourselves that we are not available for mistreatment anymore. But it's not just about cutting people off or building a new life overnight. Healing is layered. It looks like messy, imperfect, beautiful progress. It looks like having hard days when the old self-doubt creeps in and choosing to be kind to ourselves instead of cruel. It looks like reaching out to safe people, building communities where empathy, not control, is the language spoken. It looks like learning to trust ourselves again, one small choice at a time. Sometimes healing feels less like a triumphant march forward and more like crawling on hands and knees. Sometimes it's celebrating tiny victories, like recognizing a red flag and honoring it, or speaking our needs out loud even if our voice trembles. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the story starts to change. The narrative we inherited, the one shaped by fear, shame, and manipulation, begins to lose its hold. A new story begins to emerge. A story where we are not defined by what happened to us, but by the courage it took to heal. A story where we are not invisible, but seen and cherished. First by ourselves, and then by the people who truly deserve to be part of our lives. Healing from emotional abuse is not easy work. It's sacred work. It's the kind of work that transforms not only our own lives, but the lives of everyone we touch. Because when we heal, we don't just heal ourselves. We heal generations. We heal the future. When we talk about emotional abuse, when we name it, when we tell the truth about it, we are doing something radical. We are choosing to stand in the light when everything about that experience tried to keep us in the dark. We are choosing to believe that our feelings matter, that our boundaries matter, that our healing matters, that we matter. It takes incredible courage to face the invisible wounds, the ones no one else could see but that we carried inside us every day. And it takes even greater courage to say, I will not let this define me. I will not carry this shame anymore. I will heal, not because it's easy, but because I'm worth it. Maybe the scars are not visible to the outside world. Maybe there's no one standing around us clapping for our bravery. But every step we take toward wholeness, every boundary we set, every time we trust our gut again, every moment we choose ourselves, it is an act of profound strength. It is an act of rewriting our story with our own pen, on our own terms. No matter where you are in your journey, whether you're just starting to find the words or you've been walking this healing path for a while, please remember, you are not alone. You are not broken. You are not too much. And you are not too little. You are exactly enough, just as you are. Healing isn't linear, it's messy and it's sacred and it's worth every shaky, beautiful, honest step. Trust yourself, trust your voice, trust your right to peace and joy and connection. You deserve every bit of it.